Guys, please check your audio and video settings, please. Guys, please check your audio and video settings, please. Are you there, guys? Yeah. Mapping SQL operations as subclasses. So this is the fifth technique of what? Spring JDBC programming. Are you listening? Right, guys. Yeah, this is bit different, guys, bit difficult also. It takes time to digest. It takes time to understand. Be alert. Be alert. If you are not alert, it will go over your head. Right, boss. Now listen. Limitations with JDBC template. Limitations with JDBC template. Okay. Number one, it is single-threaded or synchronized object. Synchronized object. So it can execute only one SQL query at a time. So not suitable in multi-threaded environment. B, guys. Okay, B. If we use, please listen carefully, JDBC template to execute same SQL query for multiple times. Same SQL query for multiple times. Listen carefully. It will make the same SQL query as the pre-compiled SQL query for multiple times. Same SQL query as pre-compiled SQL query for multiple times, which is unnecessary. Which is unnecessary and cannot be avoided. Cannot be avoided using JDBC template. Okay, now listen, I will take one small example, guys. Public string get employee name by number. This is my method, guys. Okay, this and cannot be avoided. Yeah, now listen, problem itself takes time. Please focus into employee number. Where, guys, this is the code in DAO IMPL class. This is the code in DAO IMPL class. Done. This is the code in DAO IMPL class, guys. Now listen. String name is equal to JT dot query for object. JT dot query for object. Are you listening, guys? JT dot query for object. Select ename from EMP where employee number is equal to question mark. Employee number is equal to question mark. Next, required class, string dot class. What is the parameter value? No. What is the parameter value? No. Return name. End of the method. End of the method. Let us assume service class has called this method for 200 times with different numbers. 200 times for, okay, 200 times with different numbers. Now tell me guys, how many times the data source object is gathered from injected JDBC template, guys? 200 times. How many times connection object is gathered from, how many times connection object is gathered from connection pool using the data source object, guys? 200 times. How many times prepared statement object is created having given query as precompiled query, guys? How many times prepared statement object is created having given query as precompiled query? Please respond. 200 times. Are 200 times executed now? How many times query parameter value is set, guys? 200 times. Come on. How many times query executed and gathered result set object? 200 times. How many times result set is processed and gathered string value from the result set? 200 times. Last 3 operation for 200 times definitely required, because time to time input value will send, setting value to query parameter every time required. Executing the query and getting result set object required, because when input change, output also may change. Processing result set and gathering result set also for 200 times required. Come on. Required or not required? Definitely required. Are you with me, guys? Definitely required. Okay, but last 3 operation for multiple times required. But is there any need of getting same data source object for 200 times? No. Is there any need of getting 200 separate connection object from connection pool? No. Is there any need of creating same prepared statement object with the same precompiled query for 300 times? Sorry, 200 times? No. So can we avoid by using JDBC template, guys? No. To overcome this problem, we have to go for what? Mapping SQL operation as subclasses technique. Mapping SQL operation for subclasses technique. Okay. If the above DAO class method is called for 200 times with different input values, then A, gathering, okay, injected data source object from JDBC template happens for 200 times. B. Okay. B. Gathering JDBC connection object from JDBC connection pool using data source object happens for, you studied all these things in course, JDBC level, prepared statement object. Okay. Next, creating prepared statement object. Creating prepared statement object having given SQL query, having given SQL query happens for 200 times, having happens for 200 times. Given SQL query happens for 200 times. Next, setting query parameter values for the given SQL query happens for 200 times. Next, executing SQL query. Executing SQL query and getting the result set happens for 200 times. F, processing the result set object. Processing the result set object. Come on. Processing the result set object and gathering the results happens for 200 times. Processing the result set object and gathering the results happens for 200 times. Okay, guys. Required. Very much required for 200 times. Very much required for 200 times. Okay. Yeah, listen guys, here time to time inputs are changing. When inputs are changing, time to time query execution should happen. When inputs are changed, output will change. So processing of result set also should happen for 200 times. Do you have any problem DEF happening for 200 times? No. Now tell me guys, gathering injected data source object from JDBC template happens for 200 times. Do you think time to time data source object changes, guys? Do you really think time to time data source object changes, guys? No. Okay, gathering connection object from connection pool for 200 times. Do you think time to time connection object changes, guys? No. Right, guys. Creating prepared statement object having given SQL query as precompiled query. Do you think this query changes time to time, guys? No. So this is happening for 200 times. Happening for 200 times on the same query is really waste of time or not? Is really waste of time or not? Come on. Okay. Performing these operations for same SQL query. For same SQL query. For 200 times is very much waste of time, guys. Very much waste of time. Waste of time. Everyone understood my statement, guys? Right, guys. Okay. To avoid ABC operations taking place for multiple times on same query, and to make sure those operations happening only for one time. Those operations happening only for one time. Only for one time. We need to go for Okay, mapping SQL operations. SQL operations means queries as subclasses technique. Mapping SQL operations, nothing but queries as subclasses technique. As what? Subclasses technique. Are you comfortable, my dears? Come on. I think everyone registered this point. I think everyone enjoyed these statements, guys. Okay, I think our background preparation is well done. So shall we go to solution? How does this solution happens, guys? Okay, guys. In this technique, in this technique, we need to take separate subclass as the inner class in the DAO. Separate subclass as the inner class in the DAO. As the inner class in the DAO. Okay. Extending from mapping SQL query class. What is this? For select queries. Okay. Or SQL update class for non-select queries. What queries, guys? For non-select queries. Okay, non-select queries. Where we need to give data source object SQL query to superclass of inner class, only for one time. Only for one time. Are you getting my point, guys? Superclass of inner class only for one time, and getting precompiled query as the object of. It takes time. Don't give up. As the object of inner class object. As the object of inner class, and we use that inner class object, okay, in DAO class for multiple times to execute the precompiled query for multiple times. Precompiled SQL query for multiple times. To execute the precompiled SQL query for multiple times. Are you listening my statement, guys? Okay. Now, if I give this paragraph, I know you will understand only 10%. Okay. Now I will go to the real code. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. Now come to this boss. Maven project. Maven project. For one thing you mentally prepare. For every SQL query, one inner class comes subclass. Subclass of mapping SQL query for select query. Subclass of what? SQL update class for non-select queries. In that inner class, we give data source and query to superclass only for one time. There we make the queries as what? Precompiled query only for one time. Now that inner class object represent precompiled query. We try to use that inner class object in the DAO class for multiple time to execute the query. So overall, how many times we are making query as precompiled query? One time. How many times we are giving data source object? One time. In this process, how many connection objects are gathered from connection pool? One time. So all the three problems are solved or not? Earlier, what is the problem? We are gathering injected data source object for multiple times. But this time, how many times we are giving data source object? One time. How many times we are getting connection object? One time. How many times we are making precompiled query? One time. But how many times we are executing precompiled query with the different input values? Multiple times. Where? In the DAO class. So that means whatever problems we raised, those problems got solved or not? Yes. Okay. You see the code, then you will get the idea. You see the code, you will get the idea. Don't worry about it, guys. Yeah, what is this? Maven hyphen, archetype hyphen. Okay, now what is that? Maven hyphen, archetype hyphen, quick start. Say next. JDBC pros. Okay, JDBC pros 7. Mapping SQL operations as subclasses. com.nt.test. Say finish. com.nt.test. Say finish. Oh, yesterday I didn't commit it. Today you remind me, I will commit the code. Go to pom.xml, guys. Actually, let's not waste the time. Here also I need same jars, guys. Here also I need same jars. Copy, paste. Maven update. Maven update, guys. New package. com.nt.servlet. New package. com.nt.cfgs. New package. com.nt.dao. com.nt.dao. Yeah, for the timing, these are enough, guys. I think it's not servlet, guys. It should be service. It should be service. It should be service, guys. Now tell me. New. What's there? New interface. Interface. iEmployee DAO. I can take any table, right? Any table, but I have a ready-made table. I'm just trying to take the advantage of ready-made table, nothing else. Yeah, tell me, guys, here. Public string get employee name by number. into NO. Get employee name by number into NO. Cool. Now I have DAO IMPL class, guys. Employee DAO IMPL. What is the interface? IEmployee DAO. IEmployee DAO. Cool, guys. Now listen. Okay, this is DAO. What is the annotation we are having? @repository EMP-DAO. Private data source DS. Private data source DS. Private data source DS, guys. Okay, private data source DS. Tell me, guys. @auto-void. @auto-void. Here we are having @auto-void. Cool, guys. Now tell me next one. @repository EMP-DAO. @auto-void. Cool. Now I'm taking one query, guys. Okay. Private static final string. Private static final string. Come on. Achha, here I cannot take here, guys, because I want data source object visible in the constructor. So let's go for auto wiring through constructor. We try to do private static. This one, get employee name by number. Select ename from EMP, where EMP-NO is equal to question mark. EMP-NO is equal to question mark. Now I'm taking one constructor, guys, to support constructor injection. Employee DAO, data source DS. Data source DS. Tell me, guys, this dot DS is equal to DS. Now I'm adding @auto-void on the top of it. Sir, why, sir? Why, sir? First of all, tell me, constructor executes first, injection on field happens first. Constructor executes first, injection on field happens first. First constructor. If I want data source object in the constructor, better to do field level injection, better to do constructor level injection. If I want to use data source in the constructor, better to do what? Better to do what? Field level injection, better to do what? Constructor level injection. I want reply. Now listen. Yeah, from constructor, I want to pass data source to somewhere else. Okay, that means at the time of executing constructor, only data source object is required. But if I do injection directly on the field, at the time of executing constructor, do you think data source object is visible in the constructor? No. That's why I'm preferring what? Constructor mode auto wiring. Here, field level injection is not going to work out, guys. Do you think field injection going to work out? When I want to use data source object in the constructor, really not, certainly not. Come on. Okay, guys. Now listen carefully. Listen, don't give up. Okay. Yes, I need a data source. I want to pass the data source from constructor to some other places. That's why. Where I will talk. Okay. Inner classes as subclasses. As subclasses of mapping SQL query or okay, guys. Rakesh Kumar, you don't use brain. I want to pass data source object from constructor to other class. If I inject data source object to DS, through field injection, at the time of executing constructor, data source is available in the constructor. This is the question I asked, my dear. If you stop thinking parallelly, if you start understanding my statements, then you will be in the classroom. I asked something and you misinterpreted something else. I didn't question about visibility of data source, Mr. Rakesh Kumar. I want to pass data source from constructor to some other class. If I do field level injection of injecting data source to DS, do you think that DS is visible at the time of executing constructor? This is my question. I want response from Rakesh Kumar. First constructor executes, then instance variable injection happens, right? So that means if injection is happening at field level, that happens after execution of constructor. Do you think data source object, injected data source object is visible in the constructor? If I go for field level injection, no. That's why I'm going for constructor level injection. Okay, guys. Inner classes as subclasses of mapping SQL query or SQL update classes. Yeah, now listen, as I said, for every query, one inner class, guys. Inner classes can be private, you know that. Private, yeah, static also. What is that? Employee selector. Employee selector one. Some inner class name. Employee selector one. Come on, guys. Extends mapping SQL operations. Okay, not that. Mapping SQL query. Mapping SQL query. Come on, guys. Mapping SQL query. Mapping SQL query. Right, boss. Okay, I'm taking mapping SQL query. Yeah, now right now the query is going to give what? Single column value, boss. Is the query going to give multiple column values or single column value? Definitely query is going to give what? Single column value. Are you understanding my statement, boss? Oh, okay. Okay. Here is the class. Here is the class. Import this one. Implement the class. Add unimplemented methods. Okay, add unimplemented methods. Now listen, here we got map row method, guys. Here we got map row method, guys. Simply what I do, you know, string name is equal to rs dot next. Sorry, rs dot get string of. Okay, rs dot get string of 1 because only one value is there. Return name. Return name. Cool, guys. Okay, guys. Now here I am taking one 2-param constructor, guys. Employee selector 1. Data source. Don't give up. Don't give up. String query. Data source DS string query. Being from subclass constructor, if you want to execute, come on. Being from subclass, come on, guys. Being from subclass constructor, if you want to execute superclass constructor, what is the one we are having, boss? Super off. What is the one we are having, boss? Super of is there or not there? Super dot to call the super class method from subclass method. Being from subclass constructor, if you want to execute super class constructor, what is the one we should take, guys? Super of we should take, right? Now tell me, guys, here what is there? Super of super class is also having what? Data ds comma query. ds comma query. I am giving data source and query to super class of the inner class. What is the super class, guys? Mapping SQL query. Super, guys. Next, super dot declare parameter. New SQL parameter of. Or I'm just SQL parameter of types dot integer. I'm telling parameter type is integer, guys. Okay, boss. Next, super dot compile. I am asking to compile the query. Being from subclass constructor, if you want to execute super class constructor, super of. Being from subclass constructor or method, if you want to call super class method, we have a super dot. It is super of. This is super dot. Okay, what is this? Invokes. Don't invoke super class constructor. Calls super class method. Calls super class method. Okay, now general in practicals, we will take DAO class as singleton class or prototype scope class. How do you take, guys? We will take DAO class as singleton class or prototype scope class. Singleton. So singleton means what, guys? Singleton scope means what, guys? Come on. How many objects will be created for DAO class? Only one object, right? Only one object means this constructor executes how many times, guys? One time. One time. Now listen carefully. Here I am taking private employee selector. Private employee selector. Selector 1. Control plus shift plus O. Array, what happened, guys? Private static employee selector. Yes, I want to use the same thing now, boss. Why it is not allowing me to take it? Create class. I think no. What is the name of the class? Selector 1. You are right. You are right. Employee selector, selector 1. Now answer my question. Selector 1 array. In this one, I have a 2-param constructor. What it is expecting? Data source and query. Already data source here. Employee selector 1 is equal to new employee selector 1 of data source comma ds comma. Second one is query. Already we are having query. Na query is passed. Okay, I will ask. Array, I will give flow at the end. First, try to understand the scenario. Just hand over your brain and respond for my question. At the end, I will give smooth story. Listen. DAO class scope is what, guys? Singleton. How many objects will be created for DAO class, guys? One time. How many times this constructor of DAO executes, guys? One time. How many times this object is created for inner class, guys? One time. How many times inner class constructor executed, guys? One time. How many times this inner class is giving data source comma query to super class, guys? One time. How many times you are declaring the parameters, guys? One time. How many times you are asking super class to compile the query, guys? One time. So indirectly, we are giving data source once. From data source, connection object is gathered once. From connection object, prepared statement object is created once by making query as precompiled query only for one time. What do you say, guys? Convinced or not? Convinced or not? So how many times we are giving data source to superclass? One time. How many times connection object will be gathered from the data source? One time. How many times we are asking superclass to compile the query? One time. So whatever three problems I raised, all the three problems are now solved or not? Okay, now tell me, guys, all these are happening in this class. Anything happening in the superclass also reflects to subclass or not? At the end of this constructor execution, superclass is having one precompiled query. Yes or no? Superclass is having one precompiled query. Superclass is having precompiled query means even subclass is also having one precompiled query or not? Even subclass is also having precompiled query or not? In fact, this employee selector one object represents one precompiled query or not? In fact, this employee selector one object represents one precompiled query or not? I want reply, boss. Right, guys. Now, employee selector one is representing one precompiled query, this one. Right, guys. Now listen. Okay. Now listen. Here we try to execute the query, guys. We are already this object is representing precompiled query. Now have it. String name is equal to selector one dot. Listen, guys. Selector one dot. If you feel okay, if you feel your query is returning single value, then go for find triplex method. If you feel your query is giving more than one record, more than one record, go for execute method. Come on, guys. Go for execute method. See, execute method return type is what? List. Find object method return type is what? String, 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 string. Are you noticing it, guys? Find object method return type is what? String, 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 string. Okay. Now listen. Selector dot find object of NO. Selector dot find object of NO. Name. Return name. Now I am asking this question. How many times this selector one object is created? One time. How many times this constructor executed? One time. How many times query data source are given to superclass? One time. How many times superclass is compiling the query? One time. Okay. Superclass is compiling query, holding the query means indirectly subclass is also having precompiled query. Na? Yes, guys. Okay. Now listen. So that means indirectly selector one object is having what? Precompiled query. Right now, this method is called 300 times. 300 times we are calling find object method. This time it will use already available precompiled query or once again makes the query as precompiled query. On the selector one object, find object is called 300 times. Do you think it will again make the query as precompiled query or it will try to use what? Already available precompiled query. Yes, it uses already available precompiled query for 200 times to set the query parameter value, to execute the query, to gather the result, to process the result. So that means query setting value to query parameter multiple times, executing the query and getting results at object multiple times, processing the results and getting the final output multiple times. So whatever we want for multiple times, that is happening. But okay, gathering data source object, gathering connection object, making query as precompiled query happening how many times, guys? One time. Happening for how many times, guys? One time. I think whatever problem is there in JDBC template, that got solved or not. Whatever problem is there in JDBC template, that got seriously solved or not. That seriously got solved or not. Yeah. Okay, now study my paragraph. In this technique, we need to take separate subclass as inner class in DAO class, extending from mapping SQL query, okay, for select queries, or SQL update class for non-select queries, where we need to give data source object SQL query to superclass of inner class only for one time, and getting precompiled query as the inner class object, as the, okay, what is this? Getting precompiled query as the object of inner class. And we use that inner class object in DAO class for multiple time to execute precompiled SQL query for multiple time. I think after seeing the code, are you able to understand the meaning of this statement, guys? Are you able to visualize the meaning of this paragraph, guys? Okay. For slow learners, okay, the people whose bulb glows bit slowly, for them one last time I'm explaining the flow. What is the scope of DAO class? What is the scope of DAO? Singleton. Okay, now tell me, guys, as part of pre-instantiation, DAO class is pre-instantiated using constructor. In that process, data source object is injected. Agree with me? Point 1 is clear. Everyone type yes in the chat box if point 1 is clear. As part of pre-instantiation, DAO class object is created using parameterized constructor. In that process, data source object is injected. Point 1 is clear. Yeah, point 2. So there we are creating object for inner class, giving data source comma query. We are creating object for inner class, giving data source comma query. What inner class is giving, guys? Passing that data source and comma query to the superclass of inner class. Okay. Declaring parameter to the superclass of inner class, asking to superclass to compile the query. Tell me, guys, this superclass is getting data source object how many times? One time. Gathers the connection object how many times? One time. Creates the prepared statement object by taking given query as precompiled query how many times? One time. So ultimately superclass is having what? Precompiled query. Yes or no? Na? Superclass is having precompiled query means indirectly subclass is also having precompiled query. Yes or no? Na? Indirectly subclass is also having precompiled query. So ultimately what, guys? At the end of this constructor execution, selector one object is representing this query as precompiled query or not? Selector one object is representing one precompiled query or not? Okay. This is part 1. Part 2. Part 2. Service class method has called this method for 200 times. Okay. Selector one dot find object. Selector one is representing precompiled query. So find object method is also called 200 times. Now tell me, guys, already selector one is having precompiled query. Because of find object method, how many times precompiled query is executed, guys? 200 times. How many times parameters are set to query execution, guys? 200 times. How many times results are gathered and processed, guys? 200 times. Okay, we are getting result for 200 times. We are returning that result to service class 200 times. Now tell me, how many times data source is gathered and is gathered and used? One time. How many times connection object is gathered from connection pool? One time. How many times prepared statement object is created having precompiled query? One time. How many times precompiled query execution is done? Multiple times. Come on. How many time parameters are set to query execution? Multiple time. How many time result is gathered and processed? Multiple times. Are you with me, guys? Are you understanding my statement, guys? Array, in line number 39, nothing is there. We are declaring parameter type is integer. We are saying this question mark type is integer. That's it. Whatever target we have got, the target is required, fulfilled or not? Okay, boss. Now let's develop service class for it. Okay, before going for service class, from previous example, gather Spring Bean configuration file, say paste, application context.xml. Today we need data source. We don't need anything else. Why, sir? Today we are injecting data source directly to DAO. Directly to DAO. Got it now? Anyhow, DAO service, all classes are configured here through annotations. So that's why just data source is sufficient. So let's go to service class, guys. New interface. New interface. Tell me. Employee management service. Employee management service. Done. Public string. Fetch employee name by number into number. Done. New class. Employee management service IMP interface. Employee management service. Okay. At the rate service, guys. EMP service. Inject private employee DAO. DAO. Yeah, here I can inject at the rate. Here, use DAO. Return DAO dot number, guys. Done. Super. Then we have a client application here. Class mapping SQL operations as subclasses. As subclasses test. Mapping SQL operations as subclasses test. Create IOC container. Class path XML application context. CTX is equal to new class path XML application context. com/nt/cfz/ application context.xml. Application context.xml. Right, guys. Get a service class object. Get service class object, guys. Come on. Okay. Tell me. Employee management service. Service is equal to ctx.getBean EMP service. Employee management service dot class. Invoke method. Try. Invoke method. Try. Come on. invoke method. Tell me guys. Sys out employee name of 7499 is service dot, come on guys, service dot fetch emp name by number 7499. Right, catch data access exception DAE dot print stack press close container ctx dot close. Yes boss, done. Save it. Mapping SQL operations as subclasses guys. Mapping SQL operations as subclasses. Employee name 7499 LN guys. Employee name 7499 LN. Are you listening my statement guys? We got the output. You call this method multiple times. 7900 7900. 2 times we are getting output, but how to feel query compilation is happened only for 1 time. I will add some SOP statement, then you can feel it. Sys trace. This is one param constructor of DAO class. DAO class. Business method. Multiple times it is executed. Sys trace. Okay. Yeah, super off should be first statement, boss. You know that. Okay. What is this? 2 param constructor. Yes, guys. Sys trace map row method. Now listen. Especially DAO only we got it, guys. Now tell me, guys. DAO object 1 time. Inner class constructor 1 time. Inner class constructor 1 time means how many time data source connection object query has become precompiled query guys? Only for 1 time. Are you listening my statement? Okay, are you listening my statement? Come on. Only once they are given. Query also become precompiled query for 1 time. But business method is called how many times? Twice. Twice. That means query execution is done how many times? 2 times. Map row executed twice. Results at processing is done how many times, guys? Twice. So that means whatever problem I raised earlier, those problems got solved or not? Business method twice means query execution is happening twice. Map row twice means results at processing twice. Okay, in that process, setting query parameter value also happens for multiple times. But how many times you call that business method? But DAO object and inner subclass object created 1 time. Inner class come subclass object created 1 time means what? Data source connection object making query as precompiled query by creating prepared statement object. These activities also happen only for 1 time or not, guys? These activities also happening only for 1 time or not, guys? Okay. Shahid, if you want to get a complete row, then you have to take 1 more query, 1 more inner class come subclass. 1 more inner class come subclass you have to take. Today I have taken simple select operation, guys. Example. Okay. While using inner class object in DAO class, in DAO class that extends from mapping SQL query. Mapping SQL query. We need to use find triple X methods. We need to use find triple X methods. Okay. To execute and process. Select query that gives single value. And we need to use, come on guys, and we need to use execute triple X execute method. I think we have find object method straight away, guys. Find object method. Okay, we need to use execute methods. Okay, to execute and process the select SQL query that gives multiple records. The select SQL query that gives multiple records. Okay, find object method, guys. Here execute methods. Right, guys. Now listen. This is my DAO interface. DAO interface. Okay. This is my DAO IMPL class. Yes, I want to give some notes, guys. That's why I'm pasting the code. DAO IMPL class. Why is not coming? Check your side. Check your side. From my side, no issues. Am I audible, guys? Yeah. Now listen. Okay. Now listen carefully. In this technique, if my in this technique, if my class is having in this technique, if my class is having 20 queries, DAO wants to execute 20 queries. Now tell me, how many inner classes, subclasses I have to take, guys? How many inner classes come subclasses I should take? For one query, one inner class and subclass. For 20 queries, how many inner class and subclasses I should take, guys? Rajat Kumar, I will murder you. Use brain, Ra Babu. For one query, one inner class comes subclass. So now I want to deal with 20 SQL queries. Then how many inner classes come subclasses I have to take, guys? Respond. Definitely 20 na boss. Are you are not active, Ra Babu. You are not responding. I am giving depth knowledge and you are not enjoying it, it seems. Service IMPL class. See, every other faculty completes Spring JDBC by teaching JDBC template. But I am giving other 4 techniques also to you people. Are you realizing or not? Are you realizing or not? You go and search in the internet also. Spring JDBC means everyone deals with the JDBC template. With the JDBC template, everything overs. But there are some special situations where JDBC template fails. So I am considering those special situations. I have given limitations of JDBC template. Then I am going for other techniques. Application context.xml. Application context.xml. Okay, here is my client application. Here is the client application. Come to this. Yeah, find object method internally calls map_row method. You need not to call explicitly. Find object method internally calls map_row method. Is that clear? Okay. Okay, now listen. Yeah, flow of execution. Yeah. DAO class object creation using one param constructor as part of pre-instantiation of pre-instantiation of singleton scope Spring Bean. Singleton scope Spring Beans. In this process, what is this? DAO class object is injected. That's the first one. Next, employee selector one. Employee selector one object is created having data source comma query. In this process, the superclass of employee selector one class. What is that, guys? Mapping SQL query. Mapping SQL query gets data source query. Okay, only for one time. Only for one time. Come on, guys. Only for one time. So, pre-compilation of query. You by creating prepared statement object also takes place only for one time. Are you listening my statement, guys? Come on. Also takes place only for one time. Right, guys. Next. Now we can say employee selector one object represents precompiled query. Next part, guys. Next part. Okay, let us assume get EMP name by number method is called for 300 times. So selector one dot find object also called for 300 times. Understanding my point? In this process, The selector one represented precompiled SQL query. Execute 1 minute. Executes 300 times by setting value to precompiled query. Value to precompiled query for 300 times. By setting value to precompiled query for 300 times. Are you listening my statement, guys? Are you understanding my statement, guys? Okay. Gets the result set object for 300 times. And result set object processing takes place for 300 times. Result set object processing takes place for 300 times. Okay, guys. Are you understanding my statement? Array indirectly it is supporting callback interface na Mapro. Mapro is there means indirectly it is dealing with the callback interfaces. Yes, boss. Okay. Array selector one is nothing but employee selector one. Now, okay, now we can say na. Okay, now we can say. Right, guys. Now listen. Now I'm taking this part, guys. I'm taking this part. Again, I'm pasting. Whatever this part is there, I'm taking that part. Copy this. Oh, no space problem. Okay, I'm going down. Okay, in this example, okay, in this example, gathering injected data source object is happening for how many times, guys? Come on. Is happening for how many times? Is happening for how many times? One time. Is happening for one time. Gathering JDBC connection object from connection pool using data source object is happening for how many times? Happens for one time. Come on. Creating prepared statement object having given SQL query happens for how many times? Happens for one time. I think you like it the way I presented the subject. Okay. Right. Now tell me, guys, perfect? ABC operations happening only for one time. So perfect, right? So it is perfect. Nice, guys. Now listen. D multiple times. E multiple times. Okay. F multiple time. Very much required and happening for multiple times. Understanding my statement? Okay. ABC happening for one time because of what? Inner class constructor. Because of inner class constructor. Inner class constructor, all these are happening for one time. So like this, we can improvise the performance or not, guys. Come on. Right. So this is the story, guys. Right. So what we will discuss when we meet in next class. When we meet in next class, I have taken select query dealing with what? Single value. Select query dealing with what? Single value. I'll take another example. Select query dealing with multiple records. And I'll take one example on non-select query. In the same DAO class, I will be adding another 2 queries so that I will be taking another 2 inner classes. Okay, so that we can cover all varieties in all angles. We'll get a chance to cover all varieties in all angles. Everyone convinced, my dears? Got the clarity, guys? Thank you. We'll meet tomorrow. We'll meet on next class, guys. We'll meet on next class. Tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow's Arlet class is there at 12:15 a.m. Tomorrow's Arlet class is there at 12:15 a.m., not 2:15. It's a 12:15. That means afternoon 12 o'clock. Sarlet 4 o'clock Sarlet class is there. Your class next class is Monday. Thank you.